You are watching the world 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bawa. We've got an action-packed bulletin lined up for you. Here are the headlines we're tracking at the moment. The International Monetary Fund has raised India's growth projection to 6.8% from its January forecast of 6.5%. Global growth is estimated at 3.2% in 2023. That is projected to continue at the same pace in 2024 and 2025. The United States has said it will impose sanctions aimed at Iran's missile and drone program, as well as the Revolutionary Guard and Defense Ministry in the next few days. Heavy rain lashed the United Arab Emirates, flooding out portions of major highways and leaving vehicles abandoned on roads across Dubai. Meanwhile, the death toll in separate heavy flooding in neighboring Oman rose to 18. The second day of Donald Trump's hush money criminal trial concluded with the selection of 7 jurors. A panel of 12 New Yorkers and likely 6 alternates will ultimately be chosen, but this trial will resume on Thursday. Our big focus on the world 24/7, the International Monetary Fund has actually raised India's GDP growth projection for 2024-2025 by 30 basis points to 6.8% in its update to the World Economic Outlook, citing buoyant domestic demand. However, the fund's estimate is below the percent growth projection by the government, but global growth projection continues to remain at 3.2% this year and in 2025. Here are the finer details for you. The International Monetary Fund, in its latest Global Economic Outlook report, envisioned 3.2% worldwide growth for the third straight year, with steady growth and slowing inflation, despite supply chain disruptions across the globe. The IMF said that the world is heading towards a soft landing, with 3.2% growth while reining in inflation and producing steady and modest growth. The IMF expects the US economy to grow 2.7% this year, an upgrade from the 2.1% it had predicted in January, and faster than a solid 2.5% expansion in 2023. While economic growth remains strong, many challenges remain for economies across the globe.
The global economy continues to display remarkable resilience, with growth holding steady and inflation declining. But many challenges still lie ahead. Global growth was 3.2% in 2023 and is expected to remain at that level both in 2024 and 2025. This represents a 0.3 percentage point upgrade from our October projections for 2024, with stronger activity than expected in the US, China and other large emerging markets, but weaker activity in the euro area.
Inflation and sharp price rises remain an obstacle for the globe. However, the IMF predicts global inflation tumbling from 6.8% last year to 5.9% in 2024, while in the world's advanced economies alone, inflation is expected to fall to 2.6% this year and 2% in 2025, brought down by the effects of higher interest rates.
Inflation trends are encouraging, but we are not there yet. Somewhat worryingly, progress towards inflation targets has stalled since the beginning of the year in some countries. This could be a temporary setback, but there are reasons to remain vigilant. Oil prices have been rising, in part due to geopolitical tensions, and services inflation remains stubbornly high in many countries.
The IMF raised India's growth projection to 6.8% in its latest report from its January forecast of 6.5%, citing bullish domestic demand conditions and a rising working age population, with India continuing to remain the fastest growing economy of the world, ahead of China's growth projection of 4.6% during the same period. However, growth in emerging and developing Asia is expected to fall from an estimated 5.6% in 2023 to 5.2% in 2024. Despite the world economy's resilient outlook, the IMF has warned that economic growth could be thrown off course by the continuing adverse effects of higher interest rates and geopolitical tensions, including the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, that have threatened to disrupt crucial trade routes, raising energy prices and more. With Disha Bagchi, Parmeshwar Bawa for NDTV. And for further clarity on what this means for India and other global economies, we have Girija Pande joining us live on NDTV 24/7 at the moment. Thank you so much, Mr. Pande, for making time for us. Well, he's also the former president of Tata Consultancy Services Asia Pacific, part of India's largest business conglomerates. And currently, Mr. Pande is also the chairman of Apex Avalon Consulting in Singapore. Mr. Pande, let's dive right in. India is one of the strong performers. This is what the IMF has said. Growth is projected to remain strong at 6.8% this year and 6.5% in 2025. But as an addition, the IMF also said it may revise China's full-year GDP growth forecast upwards after the country reported stronger than expected 5.3% growth for their first quarter. How are you seeing this?
Yes, so the Indian performance is quite stellar. There's clearly no doubt about that. And I think all of us have been watching that growth come on. The China story is a little mixed. And I think the IMF has also mentioned it. And that is precisely because of 3 or 4 reasons. They have a huge debt overhang between the local governments and the property segment. That is a huge overhang, and they need to address that. The second issue is they also have a falling birth rate and aging population, which they need to work out. There is a huge amount of restructuring going on in China. I have done a lot of business in China, and I know some of the challenges that they face. And therefore, I think the IMF has conservatively put their growth at 4.6% rather than the 5% which the government has estimated, or the first quarter number of 5.1%. Because I think the growth is not yet picking up because of some of these drawbacks. And this will take a little while. There is a level of deflation as well that is happening in prices and retail prices. So the Chinese growth, which normally drives the Asian growth, right, because it is the second largest economy in the world, has actually slowed down other parts of Asia as well. India is not so coupled with China. So India is growing on its own steam at 6.5%. So I think that's where we see the Asian story very linked to the Chinese slowdown.
Right. As far as the global economy is concerned, it remains remarkably resilient with steady growth and inflation slowing almost as quickly as it rose. But you know, Mr. Pande, worryingly, the IMF now estimates that there will be more scarring for low-income developing countries, many of which are still struggling to turn the page from the pandemic and cost of living crisis.
That's true. I think we must remember that the big change, that the reason why the growth is at 3.5 is because the US has performed spectacularly. And no one expected the US growth to be so high. And in a way, because of that, the inflation has not come down to the level we wanted. And that affects every country in the South, in the global South. So you've got 3 or 4 challenges of the global South, which is what is worrying them. One is the supply chain problems because of all the geopolitics that is going on, the oil price, the commodity prices. Second is that the interest rates haven't come down as fast as we expected. And I think in a way, after seeing some of the latest numbers from the US, maybe there will be a little pause before the interest rates are brought down. So unless the Americans bring down the interest rates, the rest of the world has to suffer.
In fact, the Fed chairman also spoke about that. We will get to that later in the bulletin. But as far as this IMF report is concerned, Mr. Pande, it also warned that while inflation trends are encouraging, the IMF chief economist said that we are not there yet and that medium-term growth prospects remained historically weak.
Yes. There is a pessimism in their forecast for the medium term. There is no doubt. I think there is a lot of issues. We must remember there is a huge climate story that is going on, and the impact of climate. Then there is this impact of inflation, which hasn't yet come down. Then the whole supply chain because of the geopolitics. So there are quite a few imponderables. Until we see a normal trade pattern that was there earlier, we are going to see these anxieties for the medium term. And that's what IMF has projected.
Right. The IMF has stressed the need for huge global investments for a green and climate resilient future in this report as well. Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Girija Pande, for joining us live on the World 24/7. Really appreciate you making time for us and for showing us the bigger picture. Despite the world economy's resilient outlook, the IMF has warned that economic growth could be thrown off course by the continuing adverse effects of higher interest rates and geopolitical tensions, including the wars in Ukraine and Gaza that have threatened to disrupt crucial trade routes, as we have highlighted. With that, let's turn our attention now to what the US has said to Iran. Well, the US has said it will impose sanctions aimed at Iran's missile and drone program, as well as the Revolutionary Guard and Defense Ministry in the next few days, and expects its allies to also follow suit in the wake of Iran's attack over the weekend. The US National Security Advisor made the announcement on the same day that the Germans said it expected concerted EU sanctions in this regard, as the allies actually rushed to punish Iran economically while urging Israel not to launch military reprisals that could ignite an all-out war. Jake Sullivan also said that a regional air defense and early warning system would be expanded to help defend against future attacks. In Washington, though, State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said the US will continue to try to de-escalate the conflict. Here's what Mr. Miller said.
This was clearly an escalatory act, the launching of 300 missiles and drones from Iranian soil directly targeted at the state of Israel. And so what we're going to continue to do is try to de-escalate the conflict. As long as the war in Gaza continues, we're not going to be back at the place we were before October 7th. It is an ongoing process of trying to keep tensions in the region, to reduce tensions in the region and try to maintain as much calm as possible, knowing that there is an ongoing conflict that obviously exacerbates tensions in Israel and around the region.
Well, switching tracks, by the end of day 2 of Donald Trump's hush money trial, 7 prospective jurors had survived a 42-question questionnaire, a 30-minute grilling by prosecutors, followed by another 30 minutes of probing by the defense. Some had their social media posts scrutinized or been glared at by the defendant. Their prize, though, is a ringside seat at one of the most momentous trials in American history. A panel of 12 New Yorkers and likely 6 alternates will ultimately be chosen, but this trial will now resume on Thursday. Well, in other news, scientists say that the El Niño weather event, which contributed to pushing up global temperatures along with climate change, has ended, but they're actually uncertain about what happens next. The Australian Met Bureau said that as a result, the Pacific Ocean has cooled substantially just in the past week. The El Niño actually began last June, which brought warmer waters to the surface of the Pacific, adding extra heat to the atmosphere. A series of monthly high temperature records around the world has led some scientists to fear that climate change has sped up. They say that only in months after the El Niño will they be able to indicate whether recent high temperatures are due to accelerated climate change or not. Let's get you the latest from Dubai, where there were major disruptions with planes seen splashing through water at their main airport. In fact, operations at the Dubai airport were suspended temporarily due to an intense storm, with a total of about 21 outbound and 24 inbound flights cancelled, as well as 3 flights diverted to other neighboring airports. Operations, though, we'd like to update you, have since restarted. This is what the Dubai International Airport has confirmed. But schools across the UAE largely shut ahead of the storm, and government employees were largely working remotely if they were able. Many workers also stayed at home, though some ventured out, with the unfortunate stalling out of their vehicles in deeper than expected water covering some roads, as you can see on your screens at the moment. Let's turn our attention now to a crucial discovery. The supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the Milky Way, but newly spotted object takes the crown for the most massive stellar black hole known in our galaxy, weighing at an impressive 33 times the mass of our Sun. Astronomers have detected the largest stellar black hole with a mass 33 times that of the Sun in the Milky Way galaxy. It's also the second closest black hole to Earth, sitting about 2,000 light years away from the planet. A stellar black hole is formed when a star collapses, and so far, the ones found in our galaxy have actually been about 10 times as big as the Sun in terms of just mass. But fun fact for you, the serendipitous discovery is so important that scientists released details of the object earlier than planned to enable other astronomers to perform further observations as soon as possible. On the World 24/7, we have Timo Prusti joining us. Thank you so much, Mr. Prusti, for making time for us on NDTV. Timo Prusti is actually the project scientist for Gaia and at the European Space Agency. That's where he's working. He joins us live from the Netherlands. This is actually the first time such a big black hole of stellar origin has been discovered in the Milky Way. So talk to us about the process behind making this discovery using the European Space Agency's data.
So the detection is made with the Gaia satellite, and it is actually not a surprise that we will see something like black holes, because what Gaia is very good in observing is tiny little wobbles of stars in their path on the sky. And in this case, what was discovered is that there is a star which seems to be wobbling around something which we don't see at all. So it's like wobbling around emptiness. And then you do all the calculations and you come out to the conclusion that the only possibility is that there is a black hole which is invisible in the light, but the gravitation is causing the other star to wobble around this black hole.
But Mr. Prusti, help us understand, what does this discovery mean for us? How do we understand and explore stars now on?
Well, actually, it's more like indication what we don't understand. The theoretical models don't really anticipate that this kind of black holes could exist. And it has been a puzzle because there has been recently gravitational wave detections which indicate from other galaxies that they are caused by black holes of this mass, about 30 times more massive than our Sun. But all the black holes which we have seen in our Milky Way galaxy in totally different method, they are not as heavy. So it is important to confirm that, yes, we have to really correct our theoretical models to understand how these massive black holes, stellar black holes, can actually form.
Well, science is all about falsification at the end of the day. But Mr. Prusti, what makes this black hole discovery different to the ones we have made earlier? What makes this discovery unique?
It kind of connects two totally different observational methods. So the gravitational waves have demonstrated that we have black holes in other galaxies which are very massive. We knew that in our galaxy there are stellar black holes which are not as massive. And now the importance of this one is saying that, yes, it's nothing strange. We do have in our galaxy also this kind of black holes, what we see in totally other methods in other galaxies. So it's like a confirmation that, yes, this category of black holes truly exist.
And does this black hole pose any threat to our galaxy?
No problem at all. Actually, it is just like mass. So the other star is just happily going around this black hole without noticing it anymore at all. And it's, the comparison is maybe bad. It's like we are going around the sun and sun is not the threat to us. The similar way, the black hole is not the threat to the star which is going around it, nor the rest of the galaxy.
Right. And what is your team going to do now with this crucial discovery? What are the next steps?
Well, the discovery was made actually as part of the data processing. And in principle, we don't release these kind of results early on because the aim is that it's the worldwide astronomical community who studies this phenomena. However, this we considered so important result that we wanted to bring it immediately to the attention of the whole scientific community. But most of the follow-up, we really leave it to the community that, okay, this is a very peculiar case, and I'm sure there will be a lot of theoretical work, people trying to do models, and there are a lot of people will go to other kind of observational methods. But that one we leave to the community.
Well, Mr. Prusy, as we wrap, could you explain to our viewers how will this black hole help us in better understanding other black holes that have been discovered in the past?
The importance is that we really understand that there is a population of black holes in our galaxy. So with the Gaia satellite, we can detect them as long as they are close to another star, because otherwise you don't see the black hole. So we need the other star to wobble, which we can see. So it indicates that it is becoming more and more like common to understand that, yes, our Milky Way galaxy have these black holes which have been so far pretty invisible, and they are there just like normal stars with us.
Right, black holes of this type have only been discovered in very distant galaxies, as Mr. Prusy has highlighted, and this new discovery challenges scientific ideas about how massive stars come about and grow. Thank you so much, Timo Prusy, for making time for us on NDTV. Really appreciate it. Let's turn our attention now to the corals around the world, which are turning white and even dying as recent record ocean heat takes a devastating toll. It has triggered the 4th global mass coral bleaching event, according to the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. In fact, ocean heat records have been falling for months, but this is the first global evidence of how this episode is affecting sea life. My colleague Vishal Vivek breaks down the details for you.
Extreme ocean heat is causing a mass bleaching event in coral reefs across the globe. US government scientists have confirmed. They have said that it is the 4th global coral bleaching event, adding that it is becoming more frequent and severe as sea surface temperatures have set daily records for over a year now. So let's take a look at what coral reefs actually are. They are made up of colonies of hundreds of thousands of tiny individual corals called polyps. These invertebrate animals have hard exoskeleton made of calcium carbonate, and they are permanently fixed in one place. Now let's examine why coral reefs are important. They are important as they provide homes to roughly a quarter of all marine species. Coral reefs also support fish that provide protein for millions of people. Scientists say that they operate like sea walls and help minimize flooding during hurricanes. According to a 2020 report from Global Coral Reef Monitoring Network, the economic value of reefs is estimated at 2.7 trillion per year. They also drive tourism economy in many places such as Mexico and Australia. Reports suggest that each of the 3 previous global bleaching events has been worse than the last. The silver lining probably is scientists saying that the current bleaching event is expected to be short-lived.
Let's turn our attention now to the UK, where a ban on smoking for future generations moved a step closer. But the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak suffered a blow to his authority after dozens of Conservative MPs voted against it. The House of Commons voted by 383 to 67 in favour of the Prime Minister's plan to make it illegal for anyone born in 2009 or later to buy tobacco products in the United Kingdom. The legislation, which would effectively ban smoking for future generations by raising the legal age every year, is seen by the Prime Minister's allies as a key part of his political legacy. But the plan for a smoking ban is modelled on proposals in New Zealand, which were repealed earlier this year before they took effect by a new right-wing government in Wellington. By the way, I must mention, a report by The Guardian actually reveals that tobacco firms were lobbying politicians to oppose the legislation and instead support raising the smoking age from 18 to 21 in an attempt to avoid an outright ban. Well, news and updates continue on the World 24/7 in a moment. We're slipping into a very short break. Welcome back. A taste of the drama and beauty of this summer's Paris Olympics has unfolded in the foothills of Greece with the lighting of the flame that will illuminate the world's biggest sports event. In fact, in a ceremony held amid the ruins of ancient Olympia, the birthplace of the Games 2,800 years ago, the flame was kindled by performers dressed as priestesses, as you can see, though this year, because of weather conditions, the torch was not ignited as usual in a parabolic mirror, which focuses the sun's rays, but from a flame lit during a rehearsal. Well, thank you for investing your time and watching this episode of The World 24/7. We'll keep tracking the latest updates for you. Do stay tuned.